Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today we're going to be discussing roster moves that the 49ers made. Devondre Campbell's fate with the 49ers is sealed. Nick Bosa had some thoughts about that. Then we're going to get into the extremely absurd Brock Purdy versus Sam Darnold versus Kirk Cousins discussion, which will be getting heated in the coming days, weeks, and potentially months based on what some idiots have said in the media. And then we're going to be breaking down the 49ers traveling to Miami 425 kickoff on Sunday. We're going to be giving stats, rankings, injury updates, what I'll be looking for in the game, and give a prediction. So let's jump right into it first, and let's start off with saying goodbye to Ambry Thomas. Get the hell out. Don't let the door hit you in the ass. He has finally been released from IR. He suffered a broken forearm, I believe, in training camp. He has been released. It's not out of the realm of possibility, that he could land on the practice squad, just like one wide receiver named Ronnie Bell. But Ambry Thomas, yet another failed third-round pick to go along with the likes of Ty Davis-Price and Trey Sermon, just not being able, Danny Gray, not being able to find early round value. It's like the Niners don't start drafting seriously until the 4th or 5th round. Cam Latu also, Jake Moody, I'm sure the jury is still out on for a lot of people. Third round, every round is going to be vital moving forward, especially in 2025 in April for San Francisco, needing to hit on another draft class, or at least I've been saying half the draft class, to offset what Brock's going to get paid, and we will be getting to that in our quarterback comparison later on. Cheap labor. Niners are going to need it, and they're going to have to do better in the early portions of the draft, the early to mid rounds, 2, 3, 4, than what they've done previously. So in addition to Ambry Thomas getting his ass cut, practice squad moves, they signed offensive lineman Austin Pleasance, who's a 5th-year player, and linebacker Chandler Wooten, who is a 3rd-year player out of Auburn. To make some room on the practice squad, they placed rookie tight end Mason Pline on the practice squad IR list. If you remember it, Mason Pline was one of the many training camp heroes, along with Drake Nugent, center offensive lineman who's still on the practice squad, that people were really pounding their chest for, saying they're going to make the 53. They're going to make you mark my words. This is a gem. So a lot of these players in training camp, especially undrafted rookie free agents, if they make the practice squad, consider it a victory. But it's going to happen next April, May, June, July, where there's going to be a whole lot of people swearing half of the undrafted rookie free agent class are going to make the roster, because, this isn't a top-heavy roster anyway. But apparently there's going to be room for, 6 or 8 undrafted rookie free agents to make the team. Training camp heroes and nothing more. So let's transition to a player who wasn't even in training camp. Oh, no, actually he was, Devondre Campbell. He was in training camp. Suspended for 3 games. This is the maximum, or the best punishment that the Niners could enforce on Devondre Campbell. Why release him and give him the possibility of catching on with another team? With the suspension for the last 3 games, he is losing $381,000 worth of salary. And the 49ers, should they want to pursue this, could go after $111,000 worth of his signing bonus. So obviously it doesn't pay any which way to quit on your team. And Nick Bosa had a feeling something was up leading up to the game. And here was the quote from Nick Bosa. Quote, "In the locker room before the game, I heard some complaining. I was going to say something, but didn't, because I didn't want to create more of a distraction, but I kind of felt it. I kind of saw the foreshadowing. I definitely didn't think it was going to result in that." And yes, that's the extreme, absolute pussy nature of what Devondre Campbell did, whether he thought he was slighted or not, because Dre Greenlaw came back or because D Winters got in ahead of him on some other downs where Fred Warner had to come out, or they went with a third linebacker. I don't know, but it was a total Bush League shit move by Devondre Campbell. He still made a couple $1 million off the 49ers, even with this suspension and holding back, $380,000+. And then Bosa was coming under heat for not saying anything. Oh, if you consider yours, and these are just asshole content creators, non-tent creators that are just looking to stir the pot and create a story where none exists, saying, oh, Bosa, let me change my voice. Well, if you were a leader, Nick, why didn't you say something, man? You can't just not say something. You got to be a leader. I mean, Nick Bosa doesn't say anything on a good day. It's hard to get things out of him in an interview anyway. But per Bosa, he doesn't regret not making it an issue before the game because, quote, if he was going to do that, then he's not the type of guy that we want here. And it's true, right? I mean, Bosa's saying something, and if other veterans in the locker room, offensively or defensively, hell, maybe even Tabor Pepper could have slapped him or grabbed him by the throat and said, "Lock in." But it didn't. But if he had that kind of attitude, or was even thinking that prior to sitting out, then this is probably not the type of player that San Francisco, the players, coaches, staff wants on the team. And people were now questioning the locker room because of one bad egg. Did Kyle lose the locker room? Are the leaders not stepping up again? Trying to manufacture a story where there is none. And another quote from Nick Bosa, quote, "This locker room is great. It's always been great, but sometimes when you bring somebody who's older in and from a different place, you don't know. I mean, he was a good dude. It's not like I didn't like him, but no, there's no issues in this locker room very rarely. Listen, they're not singing Kumbaya before and after every game, win or loss. Obviously, sometimes feathers are going to get ruffled. And the leadership that they have in the locker room and what Kyle and John has set forth is a testament to that, right? They are setting the tone for the organization. It trickles down from Kyle and John. It used to trickle down from Jed York and the York family. And that trickle was basically piss falling down from the ownership. Remember the early 2000s, mid 2000s, leading up to, and after Alex Smith got drafted and the bad head coach hirings between, Singletary and Tom Sula and Chip Kelly and Mike Nolan, Dennis Erickson. Now, at least there is leadership under Jed York, who again fell in a pile of shit with Kyle Shanahan because he wanted to be here, much like Jim Harbaugh did. And he didn't really have to do much convincing other than, paying them a fair-ish salary or fair to high salary. But there's nothing wrong with the 49ers leadership, the locker room. Sometimes there's going to be one bad apple in the bunch, but you don't want that bad apple to stick around too long and start infecting or causing others to go rotten. So Campbell suspended. His locker's been cleaned out. There's no trace that he ever even existed with this team anymore. And one shitty apple has been cut. Ambry Thomas. He's been living off that one interception at the end of the regular season in 2021 in overtime against the Rams. And he came out in an interview saying, like, after that, or in 2022, or early into 2023, he thought he had it figured out, took his foot off the gas, wasn't trying as hard. You never have it figured out, man. You are a bottom of the roster player. You're the 4th, 5th, or 6th best cornerback on your team. Why would you ever think you don't have to try that hard or that you've got it figured out? You've been yanked from starting duty from the get-go. From when actually your rookie year, you couldn't even get on the field because you weren't strong enough. Your first 12, 13 weeks was spent like in the weight room and practicing because you just weren't ready to play. I think you wound up taking the COVID year off at Michigan, and he just wasn't ready to perform. Hopefully he doesn't turn into the next Dante Johnson where he just keeps coming back because the coaching staff likes him. I don't think that's going to be the case. But if Ambry Thomas landed on the practice squad, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, granted, they just made 2 practice squad moves at linebacker and offensive line. So I don't think they're going to bring him in. But having Ambry Thomas on the practice squad is not a bad thing. Like having Ronnie Bell on the practice squad is not a bad thing. They are just not fit for the actual 53-man roster. And that's okay. At least it's okay to me. I don't know if it's okay to them. So let's dive into basically the bulk of what I want to talk about. And the absurdity has started already with a lot of midbrains that think Brock Purdy is not worth an extension. A lot of people that are prisoners of the moment, a lot of people that have short-term memories and don't understand what it means to have a franchise quarterback. And Brock Purdy is a franchise quarterback. He's not elite. And I know people out there are arguing that. A lot of the ivory tower moronic non-tent creators, the Cone Clown clique, is arguing that Brock's not elite. It's not an argument. He's not. He's not. We know who the elite quarterbacks are in the league. It's Allen, it's Mahomes, it's Jackson, and it's Burrow, right? Am I forgetting somebody? Hopefully I'm not. You want to throw, the next tier down-ish, like semi-elite. You want to throw Herbert in there. You want to throw Stafford in there. Not going to have any tremendous arguments. And I feel like I'm forgetting somebody that we're going to include as elite. But Brock is not there. But Brock is a top 8 to 12, 13 quarterback in this league, and there's nothing wrong with that. When he's playing well, he's a top 10 quarterback, right? And I don't think that's really arguable. People are going to have their issues about, sorry, let me change my voice. But Brock Purdy can't play in the rain, yo. I mean, like you saw it in the snow and in the inclement weather in Buffalo, and he can't throw the ball in the rain, and the ball slips out of his hands for a fumble. How well did Josh Allen play in that snow game? Allen was 14 of 18. Brock was 11 of 18 with 4 drops. 2 or 3 of those bad drops. 2 or 3 of those drops are caught. He has the same at least passing completion percentage stat line as Josh Allen. For whatever that's worth, I'm just giving you facts. I'm not saying he has the arm Josh Allen has or the mobility. I'm not saying any of that. But neither one played well in the snow. And how about this past week against the Rams? Did Matt Stafford play well in the rain? The first half, he was scared to throw. He was a complete shit show and a wreck. And the first 2 Rams offensive drives should have ended up with interceptions by Demo and Talanoa Hufanga, or at least one. And later on, at least one other could have been picked if Talanoa Hufanga didn't mistime his jump. Played better in the second half when it wasn't raining. But Brock Purdy outplayed Matthew Stafford when it was raining. Overall, Stafford had the better day. It's inarguable. Second half, watching the game, looking at the stats, I'm certainly not going to argue that. But let's not sit here and find reasons, invent reasons. You can't find them. Invent reasons why Brock isn't going to be the guy. Inclement weather. Did he outplay Jordan Love last year in the playoffs? Was Jordan Love the one that choked the game away with 2 horrendous interceptions? One that literally ended the game. Did Brock put the team in a way on his shoulders to come back against them and the Lions? Yes, he did. And did he leave the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter and in overtime with a 3-point lead that unfortunately the defense could not hold? Yes, he did. Again, I am not saying Brock Purdy's elite. I'm not saying he's a top 5 quarterback or a top 7 quarterback in the league. He's a top 8 to 12 quarterback in the league, and he is going to get paid like a top 6 to 10 quarterback in the league, or he should get paid like a top 6 to 10 quarterback in the league. If you're his agent and you're Brock, what are you going to do? You're going to ask for Dak money. Why would you not? Is there ever going to be an agent that's like, we don't want to reset the market. We'll take under 50. I'd fire my agent if that was the case. You aim high, the organization aims low, you negotiate, what a concept, and you meet somewhere in the middle. Now, guaranteed money is going to matter more so than average annual value, but I still think the floor is 50. I don't think any way Brock gets less than 50. And Josh Allen, it was reported after the season, he's going to be renegotiating his deal because I think he's like the 13th or 14th highest paid quarterback, making $45 million annually. That's just based on how, when he signed the contract X number of years ago. Market goes up like the housing market, except the housing market, the bubble bursts sometimes. The QB market, the bubble will never burst. It'll never burst unless there's another COVID situation that severely eats into the revenue, the profits that the league generates. It's just going to keep going up. Wide receivers have, edge rushers have, cornerbacks have, and quarterbacks will or have increased most of all because it's the most important position in pro sports. But let's start with the absurdity. And let's start with Sam Darnold, who's having a really good year with the Vikings. Really good year with the Vikings. Good for him. Brian Baldinger, he of the sometimes mediocre analysis, but always with the crooked fingers, called Brock literally his quote here, a declining player. And he would, quote, flip him for Sam Darnold right now. Let's just stop right there. If you were to put Brock behind the Vikings line with that opportunistic defense, with those healthy receivers, and TJ Hawkinson now back, and Aaron Jones and his mobility, don't you think he would have a better stat line than he has right now? And if you put Sam Darnold with the Niners, with all the injuries and everything that's beset them, do you think he would have the stat line that he has right now? No. Well, the first one was a yes, right? For Brock, better stat line, and Sam Darnold would have a worse stat line. Calling Brock a declining player at what, 24 years old? 24, 25? Are you serious? Are you serious? First year showed a lot of promise in that runs the NFC Championship game. Second year built upon that with an MVP caliber performance and Super Bowl appearance. And this year, everything has gone wrong between holdouts and gunshots and injuries and new defensive coordinators and new players quitting on the team, Yak not being there. There was a stat where last year, get this, Debo, Ayuk, and McCaffrey accounted for 40 touchdowns last season. This season, 2 so far. And only Debo is left to up that number. And what is that going to end at? 3, 4? And I know Jennings has filled some of that Ayuk gap and has, 5 or 6 touchdowns, whatever it may be. 40-2. Are we saying that's on Brock? Are we really saying that not getting the same productivity from the players behind Ayuk and McCaffrey is Brock's fault? Is it Brock's fault that we still don't know what Ricky Pearsall is? Like, honestly, what is he? Is he a possession receiver? Is he a speed receiver? Is he a gadget player? Probably not a gadget player. Is he tough? Yeah, he's probably tough, coming back from that gunshot wound. But we don't know what he is, whether he's getting open or not, or Brock's hitting him or missing him or not. He hasn't made, and some people want to give him a total pass on the season. I'm not quite there. I think since he's been activated, it's been about half the season, or however many games that he's been available, 8 to 10. I forget if he came back after week 4 or week 6. He's had enough time now to get acclimated, especially with Ayuk being injured. If Ayuk was still playing and he's scrapping for playing time behind Ayuk, Debo, and Jennings, then you could say, well, we really don't, he hasn't had an opportunity. But he's had that opportunity because Chris Conley is nothing special and he's an older player. Ronnie Bell got released and Jacob Cowing, Kyle's too afraid to put him on the field for whatever reason. Quarterbacks got way too much praise and way too much blame. But to say that Brock is a declining player and you would flip him for Sam Darnold right now is the height of ignorance. But it gets even more stupid. Here's the next quote from Brian Baldinger. Quote, I would be having a conversation with Minnesota to see what it would take to get Sam Darnold back. Newsflash, Baldinger, he's only signed for this year with the Vikings. He is a free agent after the season. So the Niners or anybody else could sign Sam freaking Darnold when free agency starts, unless the Vikings re-sign him before the free agency period officially begins. But this is why now mainstream media, folks that just don't dig into one team as much as, we do as fans, you can only take what they say with a grain of salt. Brian Baldinger does not frankly have the knowledge about the 49ers that I do. He just doesn't. or a lot of us fans do, or other content creators. So when you make a comment like that, you don't know, or the Vikings even. This is even a Niner thing. This is a Niner and Viking thing. Has no idea about Sam Darnold's contract. It's going to be really interesting what happens to Sam Darnold this year. Prior to this season, Sam Darnold is a sub 60% passer in 6 seasons across 3 different teams. He's on his 4th team now with Minnesota. 63 touchdowns, 56 interceptions. Again, prior to this year, an 83 quarterback rating, and his QBR is in the mid 40s. Are we going to say this year with the Vikings is Sam Darnold? And we're going to ignore the 6 years before that? Yeah, the Jets weren't great. The Panthers weren't great. And he only played 1 year with San Francisco. It was a learning year under Shanahan, that offense. And now he's with Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings and another good offense and some playmakers. So I'm sure Sam is starting to connect the dots. But we're going to ignore the 6 previous years of really garbage quarterback play and say that Sam Darnold will be the savior for the Niners, or you would take him over Brock Purdy being in the Brock Purdy has more playoff wins than Sam Darnold may ever have in his career. Darnold may get 1 or 2 this season, but who knows where he's going to end up. And if Sam Darnold goes to another team, who's going to pay him? I mean, who needs quarterback? The Giants need a quarterback. The Jets need a quarterback. The Raiders need a quarterback. These are garbage teams. Indianapolis, Anthony Richardson doesn't seem, to be the guy. He goes to a bad team, he's going to revert to form. A lot of quarterbacks go to a bad team, they are going to underperform or revert to form. That's why the whole Brock needs his weapons argument is such nonsense, because show me a Hall of Fame quarterback, like a recent Hall of Fame quarterback, someone who's played in the 80s or more recently, that did not have weapons. Warren Moon, John Elway, Dan Marino, Peyton Manning. We'll see if Eli, gets in. Steve Young, Joe Montana. I mean, all these quarterbacks had weapons. If they didn't, they wouldn't be Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, the only one, honestly, is Tom Brady. I mean, he went through stretches of his career. Who was he through? David Givens, Aaron Hernandez, the murderer, Danny Amendola. And then, he did, Wes Welker and Gronk and Moss. But there was, Deion Branch was a Super Bowl MVP for them. I mean, he's really one of the only ones I can point to. And he's actually not even in the Hall of Fame yet, but obviously he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, who really didn't have weapons consistently, but always performed. That's why he is the greatest quarterback of all time. But if Brian Baldinger or anyone else is trying to convince us that Brock Purdy hasn't shown more in his 2.5 years than Sam Darnold has shown in his 7 years, then you are suffering from recency bias. You're a prisoner of the moment, and you're a midbrain. That's really all it comes down to. Sam freaking Darnold. Good for him. And I hope this is the start of a resurgent career for him. Actually, resurgent means he would have surged at some point and he never did. So this is the start of him being better than a crappy quarterback. And again, good for him. Kirk Cousins is actually the quarterback that 49er fans have to worry about more than Sam Darnold. Because for Darnold to come to San Francisco, they would have to pay him. And they're not going to pay Sam Darnold over Brock Purdy. They're just not. And the Vikings are going to have quite the quandary on their hands. It's either J.J. McCarthy. They have Daniel Jones for 1 year. Do they re-sign him? Do they try to use either one of those as leverage against Sam Darnold? Do you really want to be the one that's going to give Sam Darnold $35, $40, $45 million a year? I'd worry more about giving Sam Darnold $40 million a year than I would worry about giving Brock 60. And he's not going to get 60. He's going to get low to mid 50s. Kirk Cousins, though, is the one that people should be worried about because he was benched earlier this week in favor of rookie Michael Penix Jr. In the offseason, coming off the Achilles tear with the Vikings, he signed a 4-year, $180 million deal with the Atlanta Falcons. $100 million was guaranteed, and they turned around immediately about a month later and signed Michael Penix out of Washington in the draft. And now people are taking victory laps on that signing when a lot of people were bashing it when it happened. And I guess it truly was best player available for the Falcons on their board. Did they think Cousins was going to flop this badly? No. Was it insurance against him flopping this year? No, it was a long-term play. Kirk Cousins is 36 years old. Yes, it was a 4-year deal. Did they really think he was going to be playing it out for 4 years? 3 years at the most, and probably 2 years was most reasonable to then see what you have in your rookie, unless Cousins lit the world on fire. And he was playing pretty well the first 9 games of the season, and then things just kind of fell apart. His last 5, he's 1-4, 1 touchdown, 9 interceptions. The touchdown coming this past game at Las Vegas, a game in which Kirk Cousins did not throw a pass the entire first half against the Raiders. And what's even better is his first pass thrown in the second half was intercepted. Is Sam Darnold, is Kirk Cousins washed? I don't know. Is he 100% healed from the Achilles injury? I don't know that either, because we are not with the Falcons organization. We do not see him every day in practice. There were some people saying that his arm is shot. He threw some horrendous interceptions against the Chargers. That he doesn't have any mustard on the out route. I'm going to reserve any sort of judgment on that because the Falcons aren't an interesting enough team for me to watch at all. I have Sunday ticket. I know they were on Monday night this past Monday. Didn't watch that. I watched the other Monday night game instead. So I don't know where Kirk Cousins is at. Now, in terms of his future with the Falcons, he counts $40 million against the Falcons cap in 2025. If they designate him a post-June 1st cut, he would still count $40 million against the cap in 2025 and then $25 million against the cap in 2026. This is something that they can obviously do. I mean, it depends on how Penix looks. If he looks absolutely terrible, and granted, it's only going to be a 3-game sample, they may want to have some sort of a quarterback competition. There's no rush to get rid of Kirk Cousins. They don't have to get rid of him right when the new league year starts, in the first couple months of 2025. They can wait. There's really no rush, and they can cut him actually after June 1st and still be on the hook for $40 million and on the hook for $25 million in 2026. But there's no rush, even to trade him. If they were going to trade Kirk Cousins, the new team would have to take on $37.5 million in guaranteed money. I don't know if that means the cap hit for the new team is $37.5 million. Let's just assume that's the case. And whatever the remainder of the contract is going to be, that's a lot, especially if he doesn't play anymore. In this quarterback-starved league, could there be a team that attempts to trade for Kirk Cousins? Yes. It's a matter of how much would you have to give up for him and how much additional salary could you get Arizona to eat? Could it be a situation like with Jared Goff getting traded to the Rams? It was like Goff and a first-round pick for Matthew Stafford, and I don't remember if the Rams got anything else in return, or what the draft picks were going between the two teams. But again, I mean, there are always going to be teams that need a quarterback at a certain price. Would someone take Cousins for $25 million instead of $37.5? Probably. You'd have to figure the Achilles is going to be more healed, or he'll be in a better spot next year versus this year. If there's anything going on with the arm, the shoulder, if it needs surgery in the offseason, that can be an issue. I'm not saying he hasn't it, but if there is something going on with his arm, another offseason of rest could address that. There will probably be some sort of a market for Kirk Cousins, just a matter of who and how much. But the releasing of Kirk Cousins early in the offseason as a post-June 1st designation means a team could sign him the way the Steelers signed Russell Wilson when the Broncos released him this past offseason, and give him they can give Kirk Cousins the vet minimum, because the Falcons are going to still be paying a whole lot of money to Cousins just to not be on the team, like the Denver Broncos are paying a whole lot of money to Russell Wilson to not be on the team. So Is that a situation where Cousins finds his way to San Francisco? If the bromance between Kyle and Kirk is just as strong going the other way from Kirk to Kyle, then there is the possibility, right? That if Kirk signs for the vet minimum, I'm just making this up. I don't believe this is going to happen. Do the 49ers wait on signing Brock until they see what happens with Cousins? They don't have to sign Brock in March or April. They can get it done in May. I think they're going to get it done super early just to know what they have in free agency cap wise. I don't think this Kirk Cousins thing comes to pass for San Francisco at all, but content creators will tell you, non-tent, ivory tower, non-tent creators will tell you that Darnold's a real possibility, or that they would want Darnold at a certain amount versus Brock. And they'll tell you that they would want Kirk Cousins at a certain amount versus Brock. They can have their opinions. When Brock signs, that means their opinion is wrong, because the Niners would have signed Brock Purdy long-term. You could say, well, I mean, but Al, it's just my opinion. I mean, I could have an opinion on what I think the Niners should do, even if it's not what they're going to do. Well, if you're a smart and logical and level-headed 49er fan and not thinking with emotions and having knee-jerk reactions to stuff, then Brock Purdy is the play that makes the most sense short and long term, because newsflash, John and Kyle love him. And newsflash, he is having an off year, but he is an ascending player. You'd have to think that a quarterback's going to get better his third, fourth, fifth year versus not even half of his first year, full second year coming off of an elbow surgery, and a third year that was a disaster from an organizational standpoint, or a roster standpoint. That Brock is only responsible for so much. And I agree when people like Jerry Rice come out and say, oh, when there's injuries, that's not an excuse. You still have to win. No, listen, I get it. Hopefully this isn't an effort thing with the Niners, the way George Kittle said it was, and Bosa talking about, well, we're going to find out the next, 3 or 4 games who's going to want to be here. Like, the effort's got to be there. And Bosa wants a lot of the same players back, and he's petitioning for Greenlaw, which would be great. And you can only have Greenlaw or Talanoa Hufanga. And just as a heads up, Budda Baker of the Cardinals, safety, wound up getting a 3-year, $54 million extension from Arizona. You want to give Talanoa Hufanga $18 million annually? I don't. Even though $18 million won't be his cap hit, say it's $8 million, $10 million, I wouldn't. I'd find a cheaper veteran safety to pair with Malik Mustafa, Jair Brown, and George Odom could be your depth pieces, and maybe even draft somebody. If that person bumps Odom off the roster, so be it. Can't pay everybody. And as enticing as some of these non-10 creators are going to tell you, well, if you can get Sam Darnold for $20 million less, and you can get Sam Darnold for $1 million, Kirk Cousins for maybe $1 million, think about how much you can, reload the 49ers with. And listen, that sounds good. That all sounds good. Kyle's been past tense, was waiting, if you believe reports, although Kyle never came out and said this in a confirmatory manner, was waiting for Kirk Cousins for a while. Jimmy Garoppolo became available. They signed him. They thought that, Cousins going from Washington, was it at the time going from Washington to Minnesota, that they had a chance, or not being able to re-sign him, or if the Vikings were going to re-sign him. Whatever I'm getting jumbled in terms of his career arc. I do know that Cousins was with the Redskins and Commanders for 6 years, and the Vikings for 6 years, the Falcons for 1. Might there be a very quick conversation about, hey, do we hold off paying Brock for a couple weeks in February or March, or say March, to see what happens with Cousins and have that conversation? I mean, remember, after the 2022 season, Kyle did come out and say, hey, we kicked the tires on Tom Brady. And I guess he didn't want to come out of retirement, right? Again. And Brock was coming off the elbow surgery, and they told Brock about it. And Brock, I think, was a little aggravated, but then he thought he was logical about, shit, it's Tom Brady. Do I have to get offended by that? They weren't kicking the tires on Sam Darnold, instead of Brock Purdy after, leading them to the NFC Championship game. This is all moot. Sadly, we're going to have to deal with this nonsense on TV, but mainly on 49ers social media for the next 3 months until Brock signs. And I don't think he's going to sign the first day he is eligible to sign his extension, whenever that is, end of February, beginning of March. I don't know the exact date. And he is under contract for a 4th year. And any non-tent creator or mid-brains out there in social media that says, well, the Niners have all the leverage, they can just force him to play on his 4th year. No, they don't have all the leverage. Brock has all the leverage, and he's not going to be a prick like Debo and Ayuk were for their money, right? He's not going to go to social media and be a little bitch and unfollow the Niners and be a diva. It'll be handled behind closed doors. And I'm sure the first offer the Niners give to Brock, he and his agent aren't going to take, because you never take the first offer. And it's going to be negotiated pretty quietly. There might not be any actual reports about anything happening money-wise. And it's just going to happen one day. It's just going to drop that Brock gets signed. He's staying, and he's going to get paid, and the floor is going to be $50 million annually, regardless of what the guarantees are. Darnold's not coming back, guys. There is no career revival. Brian Baldinger is wrong. You know, he's got to straighten out his takes as much as he has to straighten out his fingers, because they're crooked as fuck. The only options, honestly, outside of Minnesota, because the Giants, the Jets, the Raiders, the Browns, and the Titans are all poverty franchises right now, right? They're just trash. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers, if he wants to play, I think the Jets keep him, because they can't do any better. And I don't think they're going to want. Can you imagine the Giants or Jets bringing in Sam Darnold? I mean, from what the Jets saw the first time around, and Giant fans in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area having to watch Sam Darnold on TV every week about how bad that was, you can't sell that to your fan base at all. Even if Sam Darnold were to volunteer and play for those two organizations for free, fans would revolt. The only teams other than Minnesota that could make sense for Darnold are the Rams or the Seahawks. Now, the Rams only if they move on from Stafford, or not move on from Stafford, say Stafford retires. Something happens, he doesn't have it anymore, or something's going on with his arm, and he decides to hang him up, and McVay stays. I can see Darnold being an option there. And Seattle, even though Geno Smith dodged major injury on his knee, I'm not even sure if he's actually going to be out this week or what. You have Sam Howell behind him, and Mike McDonald and the leadership in Seattle may be enticed by what they've seen from Darnold this year to maybe attempt to take the next step quarterbacking wise. And if we're going to say Sam Darnold's a step up on Geno Smith, you could argue that, both sides. I don't know. I don't care. Darnold, no. Cousins, no. Brock resigns. Don't worry about what the non-10 creators say and the haters, because they're mid-brains and they're not using their head and not understanding how the organization feels, or really what the Niners are trying to avoid. And listen, if people are even saying $50 million is a year, $50 million annually, again, it's really the guarantees, but let's go with the annually, is way too much for Brock Purdy, then to me, there's a cost of doing business to stay out of QB purgatory. And set the amount to that. Is that $5 million, $7 million, $10 million a year just to stay out of QB purgatory, like the Jets have been in forever, the Titans after Steve McNair passed, the Bears have been in forever, or since maybe Jay Cutler and Jim McMahon, and maybe Caleb Williams is going to be the answer. The Titans, the Colts since Andrew Luck. There is, to me, it's almost like a gratuity, an added amount that you could work into a contract to say, listen, we found our guy. He might not be the guy. There's only maybe 3, 4, or 5 the guys in the NFL. If you don't have the guy, that's okay. You can have a guy, a strong guy that is going to lead your offense, lead your team, be the face of the organization. And with the track record that Brock Purdy has as a top 7, 8 to 12 or 13 quarterback in the league, you don't throw those players away, or you don't not re-sign those players. And folks that have a different point of view, I'm sorry to say, you're wrong, because the Niners are going to re-sign him. None of this, well, it's my opinion, so it's not wrong. You're wrong. So let's go to the preview. Niners at Miami, 4:25 Eastern Standard Time. Dolphins are actually a 1.5 point favorite. Both teams 6-8, wildly disappointing seasons. Injuries have derailed both teams. The big one for Miami obviously being Tua missing a bunch of time. For San Francisco, it's basically been across the board. There's folks out there, mainly Niner fans online, wondering if Mike McDaniel as head coach of the Dolphins gets fired. If he does he come back to San Francisco? I don't know. I don't really care. It's like the whole Robert Saleh discussion. After the season, does Saleh come back and become defensive coordinator? I would think that Saleh and Mike McDaniels would view that as a backwards step in their career. If Mike McDaniels gets fired, I don't think he gets hired to be a head coach somewhere else next year. He might have to take a year off, and Robert Saleh the same, and be an OC and DC respectively someplace else. But it's been just as much of a struggle in South Florida as it's been by the Bay. Miami, however, has won four of their last six, and their last three at home, beating Las Vegas, the Patriots, and the Jets. Not exactly murderer's row. Tua, overall, pre and post his concussion return, completing 74% of his passes, averaging 265 in the air per game, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Devon Achane is leading the rushing attack, which has not been nearly as strong as last year, 46 yards per game with 4 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill at receiver, 58 yards per game and 5 scores. Then Jonnu Smith at tight end, 53 yards a game and 6 scores. Someone I wouldn't mind the Niners if he's signed to a 1-year deal, and I have no idea, but someone that the Niners can maybe look at next year. And Jalen Waddle, 50 yards per game and 2 touchdowns. Defensively, this is a good, even though it may not show numerically in some of the bigger stats, but a good defense. 28 sacks on the season, led by defensive tackle Zach Seiler with 7.5. Rookie linebacker Chop Robinson out of Penn State with 5, and the ageless Calais Campbell on the D-line with 4 interceptions. They've only garnered 7. Jalen Ramsey has the most with 2. So offensively, a bit middling, but obviously looking up since Tua has been back. But obviously, these rankings take into account when Tua wasn't playing. 19th overall, 14th passing, averaging 223 a game, 26th rushing, averaging 101, and 24th in points scored, averaging 20 a game. Defensively is where they're much better. 6th overall, 8th against the pass, averaging 205, 8th against the rush, averaging 104 a game, and 13th in points allowed, averaging 22. Turnovers, Niners and Dolphins basically even and bad. Miami -4, the Niners. I'm sorry, Miami -5, the Niners -4. Both teams a bit banged up going into this in terms of folks being questionable. For the Niners, it's Jair Brown, Trent Williams, Malik Mustafa, and defensive lineman Khalil Davis. For the Dolphins, it's Jalen Waddle, offensive tackle Armstead, and Lamb, and wide receiver D. Eskridge. The Dolphins, of note, and it's only of note because of the name, cut OBJ earlier this week or the end of last week. So what I'm looking for in this game, and I'm not looking for them to tank. I'm not looking them to finish 6-11 just to get the better draft position. I will be rooting for them, this game to win, to have a bounce back performance. And that's what I want to see from the offense. Will it bounce back from what we saw against the Rams, half in the rain, half not in the rain and that was a bad Rams defense, low to mid 20s across the board in terms of yardage and points allowed. And the Niners couldn't get anything going. Neither could the Rams. Rams scored 12, Niners scored 6. It's not like it was an offensive juggernaut, but there was a game that the Niners could have had. And with the Seahawks losing to Green Bay on Sunday night, a win against the Rams would have had them 1 game out in the West. Even with that win and the Seahawks loss, it would have been not impossible, obviously, to overcome. But now the Niners playoff percentage is at, I think, less than 1%, whereas with a win last week against the Rams, it would have been under 40%. So not fantastic odds. Will the offense bounce back? Will this be the week where Debo finally steps up? We've been waiting for it all year. If he steps up now, does it matter? There's 3 games left, but the last 3 games could go a long ways towards understanding or evaluating if Debo is starting to be washed and a little spent, or is he part of the 49ers offensive plans in 2025 and possibly beyond, should the Niners want to give him an extension, although I don't think that would be smart business. So Debo's got to step up, the passing game as a whole, Brock included. And if this has the makings of a potential shootout, and by shootout, I mean not 12-6. So if it's in the 20s, mid to high 20s, can the run game still get 30 plus carries in a potential shootout? A shootout does not mean pass, pass, pass. And last week, the Niners had less than 20 carries against the Rams in a game in the rain where a lot wasn't working. But the Niners could not stay on the field. They were about 27% in terms of third down conversions. Could not sustain drives. And obviously, even though Isaac Rendo played and had an okay game, I think he had was it close to like 90 combined scrimmage yards. The running game could not get untracked for whatever reason. Miami is top 10 against the run, top 10 against the pass. Is this going to be a pick your poison type of situation for San Francisco? But other teams have been able to score on the Dolphins. We're not talking about a 2000 Ravens, 85 Bears, or 2013 Seahawks defense. The Niners are going to be able to move the ball. I think I'm more worried about, can San Francisco slow down Miami's passing game? Now, Waddle's questionable. He'll probably play. Tyreek Hill has had a down year, but he's still Tyreek Hill. It's not like he's a half a second slower now in his 40-yard dash or anything. And Jonnu Smith has emerged as a viable second or third target at tight end. Can they get pressure on Tua? Can they rattle him? And Tua has been good the last 5 games, 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. All 3 were last week against Houston. And he threw, I think, 1 touchdown. Prior to that, 4 games prior to that, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. Houston's defense is better than San Francisco's. Maybe not statistically in terms of yards allowed, but I think D'Amico Ryans has that defense playing with more activity, more energy at a higher level, certainly with, keeping teams out of the end zone, better defense in the red zone. I mean, the Niners' defensive issues isn't yardage, it's scoring, it's points. It's allowing 7 when you should settle for 3, allowing 3 when they should maybe get nothing, getting stops in the red zone, pushing teams out of field goal range, getting more turnovers. But I want to see, because we haven't seen it much in terms of the bookend D-ends, to make Tua uncomfortable, will Bosa and Floyd have an impact at the same time? Now, Floyd has 8.5 sacks. Bosa has 7. Maybe they both wind up with around 10 or more on the year. And if you kind of went into this season saying, both your DNs would have around 10 or more sacks, you'd probably feel pretty good about, well, I don't want to say you're going to feel good about the Niners' chances of making the playoffs because it's just your D-line and just your DNs. But you would say, yeah, I'd sign up for that in terms of how the Niners wanted to revamp or get more productivity out of your DNs. Maybe you'd want to see, 13 to 15, 16 out of Bosa. But I would love to see these two make an impact at the same time. And it's going to go a long way towards slowing down what Miami wants to do through the air. Is this a game where the Niners revert back to form rush defense wise? I mean, Miami's only averaging about 101 yards per game, but between Mostert and HN, these are big hitters on offense. It just takes one run, one crease, one missed tackle to take 170 plus yards to the house and could completely change the complexion of a game. A way to make Tua more uncomfortable is making Mike McDaniel and that offense one-dimensional. If the Niners are giving up more than what the Dolphins are running for, so this is a weakness on weakness matchup and a strength on strength matchup in terms of the Niners pass defense. Who would have really thought that in a weird way against the Miami passing game? Rooting for the Niners, don't have a great feel about this. And I think it's the taste in our mouths that we have going back to that Ram game where the offense just looked all sorts of out of sorts, right? Just nothing was clicking. They weren't playing really, complementary football defensively, offensively. The defense was holding their own for the first 3 quarters. And in the fourth, they let up 3 straight field goal drives, which I know are better than touchdowns, but still were not able to get stops when they needed to. They could have ended those drives sooner, especially the last drive where the Rams took basically all but 20 seconds off the clock and kicked the field goal to go up 12-6. I think Miami offensively, I think the Niners are going to have their hands full on defense. I think Tua is going to have a very accurate day against whatever Nick Sorensen's going to throw at him. And Sorensen's been calling better games the past 3 or 4 weeks. You have to give him credit there. I still don't want to see him on the team next season, even though I think Nick Bosa basically came out and said that, he wants a lot of the players back in the coaching staff. Again, if Ulbrich or Jim Schwartz or Mike Zimmer's available, you go after them in a heartbeat. And I want to see the offense perform before I predict they're going to perform. Played great against the Bears, and the Bears are closer to the Dolphins defense than the Rams are in terms of maybe the talent, the rankings, what they're putting on field and what they're putting on tape. I think the Dolphins defense does enough to slow the Niners down. I think Miami wins this game 24-20. I think it'll be a close game. I think Miami covers the spread, and I think it drops the Niners to 6-9 heading into next Monday night, assuming that, I guess that's not going to get flexed because they would have potentially flexed it already, right? Against Detroit, who is almost an equally banged up team as San Francisco, but it's mainly on the defensive side of the ball for the Lions. So Dolphins winning, Dolphins getting to 7-8 and clinging, so tightly to their playoff lives, although they just dug themselves too deep of a hole. And San Francisco may have to wait another week to get off the schneid and get that 7th win of the season, but we shall see. So this is going to be the only podcast for this week, recording on a Wednesday. It'll lead us all the way up until game day on Sunday, and then we'll have our normal 2 podcasts next week. Monday and Thursday is what I am aiming for, a Dolphins reaction show and a look ahead to the Lions Monday night game, and obviously anything in between that's going on in Ninerland we will cover. But that concludes the podcast. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Whatever you guys are doing between now and the Dolphin game, more specifically now and when we speak again, stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.